Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Vivian and I do Vibe with Viv relationship coaching. That stands for vision, inspiration, belief, and empowerment. My goal is to help you heal, help you move forward from any relationship heartbreak. So if this is you, I want to say welcome. Today we're going to be talking about why you may be finding yourself in an unhealthy relationship. You may want to leave that relationship, but for whatever reason, you're having a hard time letting go and moving forward. So we're going to talk about some different things here that might be going on. It's not an all-inclusive list, but it might give you an idea of maybe why you've been struggling. And I always like to say that you are never alone if you find yourself in this situation. I work with women who are in an unhealthy relationship and trying to heal and move forward. So you are not alone. So let's dive in and get to the first thing that might be keeping you stuck in an unhealthy relationship. And one of the first things is low self-esteem. What I tend to see happening with women who find themselves in these relationships that are not good for them is that you might be thinking that you don't deserve any better. You might not, feel like you can achieve a better relationship. Maybe all you've experienced is unhealthy relationships. So the idea of finding a better relationship even sounds scary. So the way you perceive yourself is right now not the best because you don't think you can deserve or receive any better. Therefore, you tolerate this unhealthy relationship. And for many people, they don't know that they're having low self esteem. You may not know that you may be experiencing that. And sometimes that happens because of our past experiences. Maybe you've been in past relationship where it wasn't good. And because you've had that past experience where it repeats itself, you think that's all you deserve. Or maybe you grew up in a home where motherly or fatherly figure wasn't very present in your life. So you grew up thinking you were not enough, you weren't beautiful enough, your hair was not the right color, your nose, your size, your shape, or whatever thing. You felt like you were never enough and you weren't measuring up to certain expectations. If you grew up with that, you may translate that into your relationship and feel like you need to just grab onto the bare minimum because you don't think you can deserve or achieve any better. So low self-esteem, I always say it's not your fault because it tends to creep in from past experiences. But if you are experiencing that and not thinking you are enough or can achieve any better, it is likely it'll keep you stuck in an unhealthy relationship. Again, not your fault, but there are steps you can take to work on your self esteem so that you can realize you can do so much better and do it well, even though it may feel scary. And you don't need that person to define who you are. So, after low self esteem, it kind of translates into the next thing, which is boundaries. When you tend to have a low self esteem, it can sometimes make it hard for you to set boundaries with people, not even just intimate partners, co-workers, friends, family members, because you want to please and say yes in order to feel loved. Again, it goes back to that history that we talked about and kind of your attachment style. Sometimes when we have difficulty setting boundaries with loved ones or intimate partners, it kind of says some things about our past and things we need to work through. Again, not your fault, but if you recognize yourself in this where you have a hard time setting boundaries, it just means there's room for work, room for some trauma history work, and just rediscovering what a healthy boundary actually looks like for you. Because the minute you can't set a firm boundary and stick to it, whoever you're in an unhealthy relationship with will take advantage of you, and that cycle will repeat itself. So having lack of boundaries will make you stuck in relationships because you're not holding your partner accountable for anything because you just want to be accepted, want to be loved. You just want to keep the peace, although it's at the detriment of yourself. So if you're struggling with lack of boundaries and not being able to set firm boundaries, this could be why you are also tolerating unhealthy relationships. So now moving on to the next things after low self-esteem and then the lack of boundaries, what tends to happen is that some people will find that because you've been in this relationship for a long time, you build this sense of loyalty. So some people find that they've been dating for 3 years, they've been married for 4 years, 30 years, whatever the case is. When you've been in a relationship for a long time, you kind of build up this sense of loyalty. So even though the relationship might not be the healthiest for you, it might not be the best for you and your kids, because of the time commitment you have spent in that relationship, it makes it hard for you to let it go. And I tend to see this often in just certain cultures and societies. I'm from an African background, so we tend to see that happen where people will stick it out because the culture says it's wrong to end relationships, or even sometimes religion will make you feel like you need to stick it out in certain relationships, even though it's not the best with you. So we kind of get pressure from society, people, families, members, etc., that tells us you need to stick it out. And then we then get this false sense of loyalty, even though this person isn't reciprocating that back to us. So I need you to ask yourself, is your loyalty being reciprocated? Because if it's not, you're actually going on with a false sense of loyalty, and it is hurting yourself and hurting your long term future relationships. So, self esteem is one thing, lack of boundaries is another thing. And now, the other thing we just talked about is that false sense of loyalty. So, I want you to ask, is your partner reciprocating that same loyalty to you, or is it a false sense of loyalty? And one of the ones that really jumps out and sticks out, and I actually worked with someone who was struggling with this, to make a long story short. So she ended up being with this person who they had just been together for a few months. They started living together, and she found that she was paying for his bills. He was practically living for free in their home. Come to find out, he had another woman, he was cheating on her. And during our conversation, during our sessions, I brought up to her, I'm like, you saw these red flags, what kept you wanting to be in that relationship? And her response after digging and prying a little bit was that she was afraid to be alone and therefore be lonely. So, fear of loneliness is a real thing. Some people will tolerate unhealthy relationships. You may be tolerating an unhealthy relationship right now because you don't want to be alone and therefore you're afraid of this fear of loneliness. So I'm not saying that if you're alone, it means that you're lonely. But what I tend to see happening is that for some reason, some of us, you may feel that you being alone equates to loneliness. And now you just hold on to any relationship you can get to avoid that feeling of loneliness. Having a compassionate partner or just someone who you can share things with is very important. But if that person doesn't validate, doesn't show up for you emotionally, isn't present and engaged in your day to day life the way you would desire, then what's the point of having that relationship? I really want you to take a step back and ask yourself, do you feel like you depend on your partner to make you happy? Do you feel like when you're alone, you have a hard time being in your own presence and just enjoying your own company? Because a couple of these could be signs that you might have this dependency or this fear of being alone and therefore lonely, because it's hard for you to stay in your own presence. So, fear of loneliness is a real thing. And I want you to consider whether you might be experiencing this and why you may be staying in that unhealthy relationship. And again, like I said before, there are steps you can take to overcome all of these things. And after that, something that I tend to see happening when it coming to staying in an unhealthy relationship, even though you know it's not good for you, is this familiarity. Sometimes we get comfortable and toxic that not having that feels weird. We get comfortable and unhealthy. We get used to it. It's kind of like the saying, you kind of get used to walking on eggshells. You get used to how to navigate this person so that you don't rock the boat, or you get used to certain patterns and customs, kind of the same thing, right? But you get used to how to navigate this person, and you removing yourself from that situation feels almost scary because you've built yourself up to be able to navigate this unhealthy relationship. So, again, just because someone is familiar, because you spend a long time with them, doesn't mean it's necessarily the best relationship or option for you. So, being familiar with this person is actually an unhealthy thing until you take a step back and realize that it might be hard for you to tell when you're in it. And when you are familiar with this person, it makes it hard for you then to actually want to change. No one talks about this, but going through the healing process, working through lack of self esteem, low boundaries, this false sense of loyalty can be hard. Healing and moving forward and actually creating a change in how you date, how you have intimate relationship is hard work. And for some people, it's actually easier to just stay in that relationship than go through the process of healing and changing. But I want to let you know that with the right support, you can go through that healing journey and process and actually move forward and let go. The thing is that nobody teaches us how to sit with our emotions, how to process our emotions, how to actually create lasting change outside of that relationship. So the fear of having to start all over then keeps you stuck. But I want to let you know that there are options. So these are just a few things that might keep you stuck in an unhealthy relationship. Again, not an all inclusive list, but I want you to take a step back and see if you recognize yourself in any one of these. And like I always say, this is all from a place of love so that you can make changes where it's needed. You can get a therapist, you can get a coach so that you can break the cycle of finding yourself in unhealthy and toxic relationships. You deserve better, and I want better for you. So if you need support, help with this, working through any one of these things that might be keeping you stuck, let me know, and I would love to be a support to you. Go ahead and give this video a like, a thumbs up, comment below, share with someone who may benefit. Because sometimes we watch videos that may not necessarily pertain to us, but maybe you know a friend or someone who is going through something like this. And whoever knows, maybe just sharing it on your social media platform may reach other people who may be struggling with this. So don't keep this to yourself, share it to someone else who may benefit. Until next time, that's Vibe with Viv.